Hello there, so here we are to the second month of our Rainbow Magic YouTube hop, and this month the colour is orange. Not an easy colour to deal with, I can tell you, but the photos I had sprang to mind pretty quickly. This is my son Patrick running the Auckland Marathon a couple of years ago, and very obligingly he wore a bright orange singlet which blends in really well with the bright orange road cones that keep the traffic at bay. So I've got quite a few photos and I'm thinking of a double page spread, but the main photo is this one, which I've had made a little bigger. So that will be the main page, and the other page will be a fairly basic grid page. So we'll come back to those later. But trying to find orange things, I went through my stash and I'll just show you quickly what I came up with. I do of course have the nectarine colour from Close to My Heart, being a Close to My Heart person, and the spongy bit thing, but the nectarine cardstock that we have is not orange enough. So I went back in my stash and found this colour from Creative Memories days. So I've used that in the Cricut Maker 3 and came up with that shape, which I'm going to use on the page somewhere. And it produced all these different triangles that it punched out. So I'm not sure if they'll get used or not. I've got some tissue-y type paper that came around some flowers that was orange, so I grabbed it. I've got these stickers from Creative Memories days, but they're not really what I want to use, so I'm working with that. Some more Creative Memories paper with the white dots, and I quite liked this pewter, which would just bring in a little bit of a variety given the colour of the sky and the road. So after many days of thinking, I then started thinking, so what have I got that isn't orange at the moment but I can make orange? So these are little cards that have sayings on them that you can watercolour over and have highlighted, so that's an option. And I've also got a stencil that I'm hoping to use the city blocks on. So let's get started and see what happens. These are the colours that I want to work with in the papers. So I think I'm going to put the orange dots in here because, as you can see, the grey just breaks it up a little bit and blends in, brings in the grey sky and the road with the orange in between breaking it up. So that's the way that's going to go. Now Patrick is going to go on this side of the page because he's facing this way, so he's going to be coming into the page. Because it's double page spread, it would have been ideal if Patrick was on that side of the page coming this way, but I didn't think to flip the photo before I got it printed, so this is what we'll work with. And I think with him coming down this way and the arrows going this way as well, it'll all work. But I would like to reduce some of the white that's behind here. So what I'm going to do is just use the foam dome and the nectarine colour to soften the white and make it look a little bit more orange, but not as orange as this. And then I'm going to add some shimmer brush to lighten that and give it and break that up a little bit. Using the all-purpose mat on the back is great because it means we can just come in from the outside and fade the ink in so that it's stronger around the edge of the page and less into the middle. So I'm going to go all the way around the outside, and then I'm going to fill in this side of the page where the photo isn't going to be, so that we can cover the white bit with the photo and have the other bit all looking fairly uniform in an ununiform kind of way. So you can see that the heavy parts where I've dabbed here first is going to be under where the photo's going, and then we've probably got enough under there just to give a little bit more of an orange look instead of a white background. So my splatter box is just a box that some product came in, and I'm just using the shimmer brush very lightly over this section of the page so that some dots will show up from behind the cutout triangles, and it's really hard to see where it's splashing because it's a clear pen. Okay, and I'll just put that to one side to dry. So the next thing we're going to do is add in the stenciling across the top, and for that I'm using this stencil, which has the, if I move that you'll be able to see, has this really cool skyscrapers, and there's two different skyscraping diagrams. So I'm going to alternate them across the top and in two colours. Firstly nectarine and then in pewter, to give us the impression of a skyscraping city, which is what Auckland is. So I've put a piece of plain paper under here so that when I do the pewter, I'm not going to get the ink rubbing off on top of the orange. And I'm just going to use the nectarine, and a little bit more this time because I want it to be a little bit more visible than we wanted when we did it on the page. So we're just going to follow around the edge of the stencil. And slightly overlapping the stencil, still making sure it's flat. And here we need to also make sure that the scrap paper is protecting the page underneath. Okay, we're going to come back and alternate now. And I see there was a little bit of black grey coloured ink got in there. I'm not quite sure how, so we're going to make sure we cover that piece with a building. And now we're using the pewter ink, so we need to be really careful that this is in place, the scrap paper, to protect it. Our cityscape. I'm going to make a alphabet using all three colours with a little bit of paper tearing. So it's a technique I learnt a few years ago at a retreat, and it's great for bringing in a variety of different colours. So I'll start by having a base sheet. I might have the dots at the back, and then for this one I'm going to tear towards me. This is the pewter card, okay. So we've got that there, and we're going to put that on the top. So I'll just trim it to here so that it's not too thick. There, and then the next one we're going to add on is the bold orange. And again, I'm going to tear the edge of that. Now, as this is not close to my heart stock, it must be Creative Memories, I think, from my stash. it doesn't have a white core, but that's okay. The pewter colour brings in enough white, so to have this as a orange core is quite cool on the top there. Right, so again we'll trim that. Now I'll just check the measurements. These are the thin cuts, the block alphabet thin cuts. So I'm going to do the Auckland Marathon, that's what I'm going to do. So when I put this through the cuttlebug, I want it to be reasonably evenly between the three colours. So the alphabet, the sheets need to go kind of there. So I will stick those down. When you stick these down to make this sort of alphabet, you do need to go all the way down the strip that you're including, because otherwise when you cut a letter out, it may not stick. It may not stick properly on the piece that you want it to. So we'll just do the same on both pieces, all the way down. Just double check that width. A little bit more grey perhaps, about there. Okay, and I'll trim that off. So we can only really go as long as the mat allows, which is sort of that long. So I'm going to cut this in half, and then we can do 2 at a time. Now you could secure that with washi tape if you wanted to, but I tend to try and do it with the least amount of hassle that I can. So we'll see how it goes putting it through without any washing tape. And you may think, well, why don't you just turn over the piece that you're pulling off, because that is already cut on one side. But with these particular papers from Close to My Heart, they are a different colour on each side, so it's a lighter grey on this side, which I don't want. I want the darker grey. So we need to put that there. Now I need to make sure that I get it reasonably similar width to these ones, because the letters are going to blend in. Bring it back onto the mat. We've got the skyscrapers up the top. We're going to bring the arrows in somewhere through here, and the title of the letters that we made earlier I want to just put on top of the buildings so that they kind of sit like so, with the grey just blending in, and I'll probably do them on some raised tape just to make them pop out a little bit more. So you can see when I put the orange against the orange in the photo, it just needs a little something to break it up. So I'm going to put a wide amount of the pewter here, but just tear the edges, to blend it in with the alphabet, but also just to soften these harsh lines. Dots here, which I'm going to attach to the back of the letters so that I can just raise them a little bit and get a bit of dimension behind them. So what I've done is attach the little black dots, the little white dots, onto the back of all of the letters, and I'm going to use my T-square but upside down to try and get everything even. So first of all, making sure, of course, that the page is even on the mat. And I just want the letters to kind of sit there, maybe even a bit lower there. Yep. All right, so the middle of this mat is obviously 6 inches. So A-U-C-K-L-A-N-D, so A-U-C-K, 8 letters all together. So the first 4 we want that side and the last 4 we want that side. So I'm going to start with the L and work from the middle out on both sides. We've got the basic page together. It's time to add a little bit of journaling. I'm going to use the wider strips that come at the bottom of these sheets and just colour them slightly orange as well before I put them into the album. One, two, three, four, 5. So I'm going to go straight out from these points here. Gem on the outside of each one. It's sometimes hard making pages about males not too feminine, so I denied about adding the gems, but in the end I decided it was worth it, and it just highlights, they almost look like dot points, which is what I'm going to be writing on journaling boxes. So our next step is to make the grid underneath, and I'm going to use the same colour orange that we used on the left-hand page. So what I've done is I started with the middle one and cut it so that there was even space either side of his arms. These 3 I've cut pretty much to 4-inch square, which will fit and gives us a basis. The other ones, I've managed to fit this one in here, and these 3 I cut down to 2-inch squares, and I've displayed them like this because there's another person under here that is a bit obvious, and we don't need to see his big face in front of my son. So I'm going to stick those there, but just to tie it in with the other page, I'm going to bring in a little bit of ripped grey pewter paper in here, and then I'm going to bring a strip of orange dots along here just to even everything up. Here's my orange finished. Don't forget to look at everybody else's input to this Rainbow Magic Hop.